Howdy! So today I thought I would share with you guys some of my raw food kitchen staples. These are things that, besides the fresh food that I have in my house, these are things that I use all the time in recipes and I just like to have on hand because they are always going to be called for in recipes, and I just like to have them right where I can get them and have them always stocked in my kitchen. So besides, like I said, the fresh foods, I also have as many spices as possible. I just kind of have a spice library. There are things that I use all the time, but I have as many spices as possible so that I can make as many things with as many different flavors as I can. So that would be the first thing. But the second thing is right behind me here, water, a really good quality water. I use Mountain Valley spring water and it's amazing quality. It's delivered every week for me, so I always have enough, and I always use that to eat or drink. We do not eat or drink our tap liquid here. We don't even take showers or baths in it. I also have a filter on my shower, and Vivi takes a bath too using that water. But that's beside the point. Okay, so here are some of my kitchen staples that I always have on hand. Okay, first of all, let's talk freezer. So one of the things I always have is garlic. And what I do is I buy already peeled garlic if I'm feeling really lazy. And then I just sort of lay it out in a layer in a container and freeze it, so that it's always there. I can just toss it into a recipe and it unfreezes really quickly. So that's not an issue. Another thing I'll do along that line is also when I have onion, when onion is called for in a recipe, I'll just use, for instance, yesterday I made tomato bisque and it called for a quarter of an onion, I think, a quarter of a cup of onion. So what I do with the rest of the onion is I just dice it up, put it in a Ziploc and throw it in the freezer. So I always have onion on hand for my recipes, which is really handy. I hate cutting onion. It makes me cry so much. I just really don't like it at all. So I like having that on hand. The other thing that I always have are frozen berries. I don't always use these, but they're always on hand if I need to make a smoothie and I don't have fresh fruit. I always have some organic whole leaf spinach. These are just from Whole Foods. I can make a spinach dip out of this. I can make a number of different things, but if I'm really desperate and don't have any fresh greens, I can use this in my smoothie. Here I use this coconut meat. This is also just from Whole Foods. There are 3 packages in here. It's unfortunate packaging. I really don't like the packaging, but to deal with fresh Thai coconuts for me, it's just kind of not doable at this point in my life, and I do like to use coconut. So I will use these. This is perfect for smoothies. I will sometimes use it in my smoothies. I use it in soups. I just sort of use this when I need coconut in a recipe, obviously. The other thing I use is coconut cream. I love this. I put this in my soups, even when it's not called for, to make it really creamy, and different recipes. So that's another one I try to always have on hand. I can't always get it, but I try to. Okay, the other thing that's obvious that I always have on hand are nuts and seeds. So pretty much every time I do a food order, I'll order a couple of packages, depending on how low I am. I will order a couple of packages of different nuts and seeds. So I like to have a variety, so I get a variety of nutrients, and I can make a variety of different dishes. I tend to switch out my nuts and seeds pretty liberally with recipes. It's just sort of a texture thing. I don't do well with cashews, so I will usually substitute out macadamias or Brazil nuts for cashews, or if it's something where it's not a huge amount that's needed, I'll use pine nuts because it gives that kind of creamy texture. Otherwise, it's not really the same texture as cashews that give you that like bright white, almost like dairy look. And it's so smooth, I kind of have to sacrifice that because I am really sensitive to cashews, like a lot of people are. So that's just a tip there. Lots of nuts and seeds always on hand. I'm always soaking and or sprouting and then dehydrating and putting those in containers either in my fridge or in my cupboard so that I have those all the time. So I can whip up a quick like nut meat for tacos, something like that, just very fast to do. I can make cookies at any time. Just makes it really simple to do. So if you have these staples I'm going to show you, you can see there's quite a pile. You can just sort of whip things up once you kind of get used to doing that. And I'm trying to add recipes onto this channel that are super easy that you can just whip up from ingredients that you already have, because you sometimes just need a snack for your kid or for yourself and you don't want to do a big giant recipe or have to go do a food order. So if you have these things around, it just makes it so much easier. Okay, so I always have psyllium husk on hand. Psyllium husk is a fiber. People take it medicinally, really, for a fiber supplement, but I use it for a binder. So I will use this, for instance, in my tortilla recipe so that the tortillas stick together and they become a little bit rubbery, but they're not slimy. Like a lot of people will use flax for different things. I tend to not prefer flax seed, although I do use it sometimes, because it tends to get that like slimy texture, which I don't like. And I find if I use a little bit of psyllium husk instead, that works really, really well. So I always have that online. It's also, if I want to kind of thicken something up, I will use a little bit of that too. So oils, I, for the most part, use olive oil. This is just, I always use extra virgin organic olive oil, organic everything as much as I can. And then I also have a few recipes that I use sesame oil in, so I do have that around. And then I do obviously have coconut oil. I use this for a lot of things too, put it in my smoothies, anything like that. So I don't actually have them here. I thought I did, but dates are another one. I don't use a lot of sweetener, but if I do need a sweetener, it's probably 99% of the time gonna be a date. And it doesn't matter what the recipe calls for, I will just kind of guesstimate out how many dates that would be. And I get pitted organic dates and just throw those in there. For instance, I used that in my soup last night. I don't use agave. The glycemic index is too high on that for me, even though there was some talk about that not being true many years ago. I find that I don't do very well on it. So if I use sweetener, it's either dates or banana, really. And you can obviously see how banana is not going to work in some things. So I use dates in those. So those are kind of the oils I use. Vinegars, I try to have an organic white wine vinegar on hand. I have a red wine vinegar and then a balsamic. And I really like sour things, so I tend to use vinegar in a lot of things. I generally also have apple cider vinegar on hand as well. I just don't happen to have it today. I need to do that order. So another thing, I just inhaled my own spit. Another thing I like to have is coconut manna. I don't always have this, but it's really nice. I really like to use it on raw bread for a spread. It's really kind of a treat and buttery and super yummy. So I will use that sometimes. This is one, I have this gluten-free tamari that I will use in recipes. I use this in my marinade quite a lot. And it's just a nice kind of salty flavor that, that I do use. I will use also coconut aminos. I stopped using Bragg's aminos quite a while ago, several years ago, because I had read that it contained, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on it, MSG, a naturally occurring MSG. But there is some debate about whether or not that's true. If you want to go down that rabbit hole online, you can. I just tend to use the coconut aminos or the tamari in place of like a Bragg's. This is a little bit sweet, So I will use this, for instance, like in my soup last night, I would use something like this. Sometimes I don't want that sweet flavor though, so then I'll just stick with like tamari or something else. Another thing I have in my fridge at all times is miso, and I will use that in different recipes. It's fermented, so you get that nice probiotic hit, and it's nice and salty, and it's just super, super yummy. Tahini, I always have tahini on hand. I use this in my cereal, I use it in my smoothies. It's just extra protein, and all tahini is sesame seeds. That's it. So it's just super yummy. I use it in place of like a nut butter too sometimes, although I will use almond butter, which is another thing that I tend to have on hand all the time, a raw almond butter. I just didn't happen to pull that out. Another thing I like to have on hand are sun-dried tomatoes. I use these in different recipes. I'll cut them up in salads, and like in the tomato soup I had last night, they just make it so tangy and yummy. I just love them so much. Sometimes I'll make my own, but generally I'm pretty lazy and will just use them out of the jar, and I like the ones in oil because you don't have to soak them first, which is pretty nice. I forgot to mention this. I use a raw coconut vinegar too, generally for recipes, so that one's really nice. Another thing I always have on hand, and to me these go together. Oh, I didn't pull the other one out. Okay, so I use chia seeds and hemp hearts, and these I make my cereal out of. I will also use them in some other recipes, but these are so good nutritionally for you. They are really high protein. I tend to really like to do high protein, high fat. So that's something I always have around with chia. Okay, the thing I started to pull up, cacao powder. This is awesome for making chocolate cookies, chocolate milk for Vivi, anything I want to make chocolatey. Sometimes I make for chocolate pancakes. It's just really awesome to have this, and there's so many benefits to cacao as well. And it's just super yummy. I don't use a ton of it in my recipes. A lot of this stuff will last me a really, really long time. I've had this bag quite a while, but that's definitely something. I don't know if you're a chocolate lover. I'm for sure a chocolate lover, and so is Vivi. So let me see. I think the last thing I pulled out to show you guys is just shredded coconut. And this I will obviously use when I need coconut in a recipe, but it can also serve if you need coconut milk and don't have it. You can actually soak this in good water and then put it in like a nut milk bag and just get the milk out of it. So sometimes I'll do that when I'm feeling lazy and I don't want to order coconut milk. I don't happen to have it. I will just use this, which is really nice. So that is all I pulled out to show you guys. That's the bulk of what I have on hand all the time between water, nuts and seeds, spices, and the things I showed you. Those really are the bulk of the ingredients that I use during the week. And then I will, of course, order what I've showed you before, which is all of my fresh fruits and veggies every week, and get my farm box too, so that I'm getting that seasonal produce and all of those seasonal goodies our bodies are so evolved to soak in. So I hope that was helpful and interesting, and I would love to hear if you have different items that you kind of keep as staples as a raw foodist. And thanks so much for being here. Have a wonderful day. Bye.